This is Luke Gygax. You have no idea how much this guy has probably affected you in more ways than you would probably admit. So let's get into the cool stuff because Luke was born into being a playtester whether he wanted to be or not, and we want to hear about this, Luke. What characters have you played that have affected the rules, such as, say, spells?
Okay, one of my characters that I played a little bit later on, my second major character was Melf, fighter magic user, Melf the Elf, Melf the Green Arrow as I called it.
All right.
And I came up with a couple different spells, mostly just out of playing with my dad. That was just our regular activities. We'd get together and play. Sometimes I'd be playtesting, other times I would just be bugging him and say, "Hey Dad, let's play a game."
That's awesome.
And Dad was old school, so when it's like I remember Melf's Minute Meteor came about from adventuring in Castle Greyhawk in the dungeons, and a lot of the rooms tended to be 20 by 20 or maybe 30 by 30 with a low ceiling. So that if you threw a fireball in there, it's a 30 by 30 foot diameter fireball. So you would get backblast, and I ended up blasting myself several times when I was throwing.
I've never done that.
Yes. So I'd whip the fireball in the room and be like, "Ha ha, those trolls are gonna be toast," and then, and my character has singed eyebrows and that sort of stuff. So I was like, "Well,
does this chainmail come with a fire extinguisher?"
Yeah, isn't there a way just to take the spell and break it down into smaller fireballs so I don't get this backblast? And he's like, "Well, you're gonna have to take some time and research and spend those gold pieces that you have to research a new spell." And so I did, and we came up with Melf's Minute Meteor. So that's like one example of things that popped out and actually got published.
Are you the infamous Cold of Cone person I've been hearing about?
Nope, that would be Ernie. I'm pretty
That'd be your Ernie. Okay.
Ernie. Yeah, it was the Cone of Cold guy, and that was with no, not Tensor. Erek's cousin probably, or I'm not sure. Maybe Tensor. It might have been Tensor. I can't remember exactly, but I'm sure we can.
I love that spell.
Yeah, it is.
I don't have to carry anything.
Yep.
That's cool. So, what is it like? What was it like playing with your dad? I mean, most dads, they do softball or basketball. You know, you had such a different experience. What was that like for you?
It was normal. I didn't realize it was different until I grew up and realized folks did things differently. For me, a regular afternoon or something with my dad would be sitting down to play a game, whether it was Dungeons and Dragons, which we played frequently growing up, or maybe board game like Dungeon, or my dad loved railroad games. So Rail Baron was a huge family game for us. We played Rail Baron for a while there as well. Empire Builder.
Wow.
So for me, it was just normal. It's something that we did.
That's cool. Did you ever play as like a family, like the whole family would have like a gaming night kind of thing?
Yes, for the board games, because the girls in the family were not as much of gamers as the boys were. So my brother and I and my dad, we would play sometimes, but pretty much my sisters played a little bit of D&D in the very early years, like probably 74, 75, 76. But after that, they kind of faded out and were more interested in, doing teenage stuff.
Doing teenage stuff,
Yeah.
Gotcha. Now, did your dad go to a lot of conventions with D&D and whatnot? And were you part of that entourage that would go kind of thing?
Sometimes, more in the 80s, in the early 80s, I would travel to conventions, but in the 70s, there was great conventions that impacted me and really promote GaryCon a little bit, which is the convention we're at right now.
Exactly, yeah.
That's what GaryCon, I try to bring back that feeling from the 70s with those smaller conventions. And there was Winter Fantasy, Spring Revel. We're just a couple local events they hold right down here in the American Legion Hall in Lake Geneva, and it was probably 100 people would get together and we'd game over a weekend, and it was great. And that's I would go to those events. My sisters and my mom would work the concession stand. They'd cook the hot dogs and sell the soda pop and that sort of stuff. And so we'd sport it, and I was a little bit younger, so and lucky, I didn't really have to get stuck in the kitchen working. I got to go play games. So I wasn't afraid to go up as, 5, 6-year-old kid and be like, "Hi, I'm Luke Gygax. My dad invented Dungeons and Dragons. Can I play a game with you?" Because I knew that worked, and then they would let me sit down and play a game.
Oh, man. Man, because it was so huge when I got into it. I got into it in, oh geez, that had to be early 80s. Early 80s. Now, were you ever like employed by TSR or Wizards of the Coast?
I never worked for TSR.
Never did.
I never did. Not officially. I mean, nope. I think I was very young when I helped my dad do some things with modules, and he gave me credit for like Legion of Gold or inventing spells or monsters or something like that. Of course, I would come up with the ideas. He wrote that sort of stuff mostly because I was 10, 11, 12. I was pretty young. But I think my payment for writing Legion of Gold was I got a year's membership in the RPGA.
Oh, there you go.
That was my payment. So.
Now tell me about this Legion of Gold.
Legion of Gold, it was Game of World 1 module. Came out a long time ago, and I actually got the idea from watching the Super Friends, I believe.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
hey, cartoons definitely affect things.
Yeah.
Don't ever let anybody say otherwise.
Yep, and I came up and I told him, oh, there was this really cool guys in this glowing armor and that sort of stuff, and we got to talking. He's like, okay, glowing armor, okay, and we chatted a little bit, and he wrote down an outline, and bam. He pumped out a module Legion of Gold and gave me a with credit, you know, for coming up with some of the ideas for the bad guys that were in the module.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Now I noticed you got a American Soldier Uncle Sam shirt on there.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about that. You're in the armed forces, is that correct?
I'm in the Army, and I just got back from Iraq. It was released 2 days ago.
Wow.
Spent a day at home with my family, and then hopped on an airplane and came to Wisconsin to make sure I could be here at Gary Con and celebrate my dad's life with everybody here.
That's fantastic. Whereabouts do you live?
I live out in California.
Oh man, smart man. I wish I could say that, especially this time of year.
I got a reminder, kind of a fun situation from conventions as a young boy. And just to give you an idea, you asked what it was like growing up with my dad, you know, Gary
Right,
Gygax, my
exactly.
father. For me, it was totally normal. I didn't realize there was any difference until I got older and had more perspective on it as an adult.
Sure, sure.
But as a kid, I'd be at these conventions, I would be standing by my father, and guys would come and be like, "Oh, hey Gary, can we get your autograph on this?" And he would sign their books, right? And so I would say, "Hey, I'm Luke Gygax. Do you want my autograph?" Right?
Right.
Well, because it was my dad. They're asking for it. So I was
Right.
like,
Yeah.
Gygax,
Naturally.
do you want my autograph? It was just kind of a funny question coming from a 5-year-old. So my sister Heidi's boyfriend got a T-shirt made for me that said, "Hi, my name is Luke Gygax," and then on the back it said, "Do you want my autograph?" It was great. It was the 70s iron-on with the rainbow letters on the back that said, "Do you want my autograph?" So it was really cool. So
You still got
great.
that?
I don't. I wore it to many conventions as long as it would fit me. Of course, I was
Right,
very
right.
young, so I was maybe 7 years old, 6, 7 years old.
Yeah, you would look like the Incredible Hulk in
Yeah,
that.
that wouldn't work out so well.
No.
But yeah, so it was completely normal. But I look back on it now, it was pretty awesome. We do very different things. I'm not so good at football and baseball and that sort of stuff.
I have a hard time believing that. This is a big guy.
But I'm a pretty darn good gamer. In fact, I just wanted to go on the record. I beat Frank Mentor today playing High the first game. So I was one of 2 people to beat him this con at a game. So,
There you go. And as long as you're on that note, what games do you play?
More recently, the past year in Iraq, I played a lot of board games because we didn't have a lot of time to invest in establishing role-playing and people's schedules.
Right, which is time-consuming, absolutely.
I would say that I really enjoyed playing San Juan, Puerto Rico, a couple of Rio Grande games that were very good.
Okay.
Small World is a great game. Enjoyed playing that. As far as role-playing goes, I really stick to either Castles and Crusades or just original AD&D.
Original. Okay. Now, do you have a favorite character class that you normally play?
Partial to fighter magic users when I'm playing
Oh, both the big guns.
Yep, exactly, yeah. Because I soloed a lot, and when you're
Sure.
solo adventuring, I'd be sitting around with my dad, and I'd end up solo adventuring. Fighter magic users, you pretty much got it covered. You can always get a potion of healing or something like that. Or
There you go.
But you need the big guns. So you got
Oh, absolutely.
You need the artillery.
Absolutely. So it's really hard to get the scope on things like this, but with I mean, there are like a couple of Dungeons and Dragon movies. There's Willow. Out of all of the fantasy style movies out there, what's your favorite?
It's a hard choice. I think the obvious kind of big answer for a good fantasy movie nowadays, very well done, was the Lord of the Rings series. That's certainly a competitor. I enjoyed that.
Well, that was one of his inspirations.
Absolutely, yeah. Peter Jackson, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, yeah, I think he did a wonderful job. I hope he does The Hobbit. I hear that's on the back burner, unfortunately.
I love that book, and I think that's a great book for children. My dad read me The Hobbit when I was under 8, and I read it on my own when I was 8 years old. He read it to me before, so that was pretty cool. He was a good.
That is awesome.
So he'd read it for us before we go to bed. And read maybe a chapter a night or something for me and my sisters.
Okay, as a final note, especially with GaryCon, and kind of mixed in with your movie there, who did Gary really look up to?
His interests were multifaceted. I mean, there was a lot of different areas that he enjoyed. He enjoyed movies, for sure, but there wasn't as much of a selection of fantasy movies before D&D became popular. I think that influenced a lot.
Oh, totally. I agree with that.
So he read a lot of pulp fiction, and I know Jack Vance was very prominent in his library. He enjoyed everything that Jack Vance wrote. So I'd say if there was one guy I had to put my finger on, it would be Jack Vance.
Wow, that's awesome. Is there any closing thing you'd like to share with all of us fans of Gary out there?
Just, hey, if you're in Lake Geneva or you can make it here last weekend of March, just come down, visit us, join us, play some games, remember the man, celebrate his life.
And there are so many people here that worked for him.
Absolutely.
That's what's so cool. You bump into so many people that were just, part of this whole engine that's become.
It's a TSR employee reunion here as well. There's probably 50 to 75 old TSR employees.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It's a great time. So,
Luke, you're fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
And guys, you gotta love it for what it is. Come down to GaryCon.
All right.
Bye bye.